Welcome to Lazy Reviews. My name is Arvid, and I watch a whole lot of movies. Many of them turn out to be terrible, some also, quite good, even great. And that's why I will give you my recommendations for which movie franchises, especially which horror movies to stay away from, and which you could give a go. Of course, these are just my opinions. Feel free to disagree. So yesterday I recorded a 30 plus minutes review of mainly the first three films in the Stepfather franchise, of which there are four movies, one of them being a remake that I didn't really want to talk about. And I just realized that's way too much time, so that video will still be up here. But I just want to give you a spoiler-free recommendation review of the franchise. So what I can say is all of them are about a serial killer who is a mentally ill man, middle-aged man, who tries to find the perfect family. He doesn't want to create the perfect family as he seeks out divorced women or widowed women with one or more children to create this ideal family, and has this huge obsession with the ideal. He builds his own small ideal houses with the own small ideal figurines. It all is this picturesque image that will never be able to be lived out because life is simply too complicated for such perfect harmony to exist. Sometimes you have arguments, sometimes things don't work out between you and your partner or the child involved, and you should just be able to deal with it, work with it, and see what might come out of it. Hopefully, you will be able to stay intact as a family. But this guy doesn't want any of that. He just wants to find people who are perfect, people who love him unconditionally, people who obey him unconditionally, people who don't ask questions, and to whom he will be the perfect, loyal, 50-ish traditional American family household man. Don't know how else I can say it. And he assumes different identities to avoid capture. Ends up in the mental institution. In these three movies, he ends up in the mental institution 2 times. Escapes both times, of course. He's constantly on the run from the police, and he goes through different procedures to stay hidden. So each movie is focused around one family and how that family slowly, usually one family member, but in some of them multiple family members or outside sources, try to figure out who this person is, who is suddenly in their life. As they don't really trust him, there are too many questions unanswered. He's just too mysterious. His story doesn't add up. He mixes up names. In one of them, he takes on the fake identity of an African American man, even though he's very, very white. So all these things, and then of course he has to murder everyone who might end up revealing his true identity. And usually he will also, during the movie, realize that the current family, the dynamic doesn't work. So he then looks for another, the real perfect family, the one where there will actually be proper harmony, while still being the husband or betrothed, I cannot pronounce that word, or, while still being in the life of the family he's going to murder. So he's establishing the new family before ending the lives of the first family, which doesn't really work when you think about it, because if he's on the run from the authorities, it doesn't really work out if he's trying to find a family in a new town. They do try to make it work that, yes, he wants to be with the new family, but they have to move, and he tries to persuade them to move. And, the thing is, this universe is really, really stupid, because it really shouldn't be as easy for him to escape and to hide as it is. I know that the authorities are not perfect, and the police often do a botched job at many things, but this is just too stupid. But that being said, the first three movies are actually quite fine. They have a lot of the cliches of the 80s and early 90s horror movies, and overall the kills are not that great. The thrills are not that great. The movies are not that beautiful. The sound design is quite mediocre at best. The acting, I don't know. The acting is okay, but nothing special. But all that being said, I think if you run out of good horror movies to watch and want something that actually has a very different and quite interesting premise, because I really like the idea of having a stepfather being a murderer and trying to find the perfect family. I think it's quite a neat idea. that actually, yes, it does work for multiple movies, even though it kind of has to be in this universe where, yeah, it doesn't. It's not that realistic that he that he manages to do this over and over. But that being said, it has actually quite a lot of good ideas thrown into them. All the first three movies are, yeah, they are definitely not highly recommendable, but I would say you will not hate yourself for watching them. The first movie has an intense and a really good climax. The second movie has a funky opening, and the ending is also quite memorable, but not that great, or not as good as the first one. The first one is truly horrifying. The opening scene of this film is one of the most memorable opening scenes of any horror movies, at least from the 80s. And the ending is also quite scary in its brutality, even if the effects don't live up to it, even if it's not a gore fest, it is quite brutal. The third movie works best as a film, I would say. The characters are more interesting. Some of the dynamics are more interesting. The investigation into his background is in some ways more interesting. It is also a bit more stupid. I don't know why this happens so much, but in the early 90s, they often give kids a lot of agency, which can really make or break a film. In this movie, it makes the film because the kid is not that old. He is bound to a wheelchair and is therefore spending a lot of time on his computer. So a lot of he spends a lot of like the investigation of the movie on the computer, and has to convince all the adults that this guy is not who he pretends to be. I don't know. I actually think it's quite good. The ending of that movie though is definitely the worst in the series, but in some ways it is the best of the first movies. So I can definitely give all three movies a small recommendation. The fourth film, the remake. There is no reason to watch it. It is not as bad as a lot of reviews make it out to be. I think it just gets more flack because it's a remake. The fourth film. So the first film is from 87. The second is from 89. The third is from 92. The fourth film, I think, is from 2009. And it's just the cinematography is the most bare bone it can be. The sound design, there's nothing interesting in it. There are no interesting ideas, no good ideas. It copies all the best things from the first three movies and then adds in maybe one or two things that I actually liked that are not too bad about it. But then also throws in some of that stereotypical high school teenage acting of the early to mid 2000s that just is quite unnatural and is really annoying. And the first three movies have only one child in the family. This one has three children, but only really give agency to one of them, which is just, I don't like that. Then don't have all those children in the movie. They try to have this relationship between the bigger brother and the younger brother, that he protects the younger brother against the stepfather, but it also doesn't really work. It's, the acting, the characters, it just doesn't work that well. But I don't know, it's not terrible. It's okay. It's not okay. It's just so below mediocre as so many horror movies are these days. And I will say these days for 2009 as well. I think the horror movie industry has been not doing that well for many, many years, aside from some of the very, very good exceptions. Like Hereditary, that's just insane. That just uses all the tropes and available technology to the best possibility. The same, I don't even know if I would call The Lighthouse a true horror, but that's also an insane movie. So, we still get amazing horror movies, but streaming services, whatever, are just so full of shit. Or, below mediocre shit, things that you can just disconnect your brain and watch without getting any memorable scenes from them, movies you will forget the next day. This falls into that category. Whereas at least the first three movies are somewhat memorable. I had watched the first two a while ago and went back and rewatched them. And I would say that the first movie has a few memorable scenes. The second has a few memorable scenes. The premise is quite memorable. The third movie, I did also watch them more recently, but the third movie is actually the most memorable of them. The first three movies, yeah, sure, go ahead. I think that's what I will say. I ended up talking more than I actually wanted to. If you want to hear more in-depth review of the movies, where I go through the plots of them, watch the full review. Otherwise, you can also read my written reviews. I don't always write that fulfilling or that in-depth reviews of the movies, but I do try and stay away from spoilers and everything. And you can find those reviews on my profile on Letterboxd called The Robot Quits. The link is also in the description, and that's how I will end this. Hope you might give this franchise a chance. Not really encourage you to hurry out and see it, but it's different. It's okay. You can enjoy it, sure. Yeah. Take care.